Hi there! How do you make burnt umber out of primary colors, as you can see right here? I'm going to show you how you can get these two colors that are pretty close to this one with just a mixture of these. Let's go. Guys, I apologize that I have a really messy palette already and that I already have a whole bunch of things going on here, but it took me a good half an hour to figure out how to get at least these two shades that are the closest to the actual burnt umber that is coming out of this tube right here. This is a Liquitex Basics acrylic paint burnt umber, which is also right here at the top. I'm hovering over it on this little, camera view in the corner. I can't talk. Okay, so that's the whole point, was to get that same color with a mixture of these primary colors. I'm gonna have to show you which ones I used because they look very similar in color. Like the two reds look very close. Oh, I'm touching it. And the two blues are very close, but they are not. And same with the yellows. So I'm going to explain to you real quick the two yellows here, and I'm going to show you that this is called primary yellow. And this is called cadmium yellow deep hue. Both are Liquitex Basics, just an older packaging. They're both the same company. So use both of these colors and messed around a lot. And I must say that I do not like the primary yellow for trying to make this burnt umber type color. This one is very cool and it makes things look green really quickly. So the reason I used both of these colors is just to let you also know, okay, you're gonna have to play around with what you have at hand because not every single color is gonna be the same. You can have a different brand paint and then you're gonna have different types of pigments as well because all the paints are slightly different. So now let's go for let's do the red first. I've got two reds here, cadmium red, deep hue, and crimson. Two different brands completely, and also got two different results. Two different colors, two different pigments. You can see it maybe, I don't know if the light picks it up, if the camera picks up the light, but this one right here, that is the Liquitex one. That one has a bit more of a darker and also a little bit of a cooler undertone, and the crimson red has a bit of a warmer undertone. And in my experiment, the crimson red kind of won in trying to create that burnt umber. Now for the two blues, again, two different brands, phthalo blue and cobalt blue. And actually, I have used the cobalt blue in this one, which got really close to the actual color, and I've used the phthalo blue in that one, which would lean more towards a burnt sienna. So just so that you are aware, I will show you on my palette this big blob right here. That's the phthalo blue. One right here, that's the cobalt blue. And then once again, this is the primary yellow, and this one here is the cadmium yellow deep hue. So now I'm going to show you how to create that. Now, just so you, excuse me, just so you know that I'm not talking out of my neck, this brown color here, that one here is actually straight out of this tube, which is the color up here in the corner. We want to get as close to that color as possible. So I'm gonna grab some paint. It's still wet, so that's good. I'm gonna grab some of that and I'm just gonna swatch it down here. I did not add water to that, so it's now a little bit more, it's a little darker, a little bit more saturated. Like, I mean, if you move it around, you see it'll lighten up, So take that into account when you do this yourself. All right, so there is the burnt umber straight out of the tube. It's gonna look slightly different once it dries as well. You can see the difference between the top and the bottom. Plus, I did not really add water to this mixture, and I did add a little bit of water to that mixture. You see how different the colors turn out, even by just adding water or keeping water out. All right, so we're gonna start doing this one because that one was the closest to that color. I'm gonna try to make it as close to this one. What we're gonna do first is we're gonna mix a cobalt blue and a cadmium yellow to turn it into a green. I'm not sure if you can read it from that far away, but that's what I wrote down. Cobalt blue, cat yellow. Okay, now I don't have a whole ton of space here anymore, so we're gonna go up here. Cobalt blue, you can still see that, right? Oh, there's a bunch of water on the side. Okay, cobalt blue, cad yellow, we create a green, mix, nice little green. And I like how this item, it's kind of a muted green, it's not super bright. There we go, we've got a green, which is the same as this one. I already did this earlier, so I just want to show you that I've already done this. Okay, so now we've got a green, and now we're going to add crimson red, just slowly, a teeny little bit here and there, because that can be a very, very strong pigment. So we're going to add some red. And now you can see that it's turning into a little bit of a purpley color. I'm not sure how well this is picking up the color, sorry about that. And I'm like, that's a little too cool, so we're going to add a little yellow to that. And I might have just added too much, but here we go. Adding a little bit of yellow. Now I still have a fairly greenish undertone here. So to bring a little bit of warmth back, we're just at a touch of red again. And you're going to have to play around with this at home if you want to try to figure this one out. But I think we got a very close match here. I'm going to put it onto here and see what it looks like. Well, what do you know? I am quite impressed with myself, to be honest. But that looks very close. Not exact, but super close. Okay, so that's one way that you can create a burnt umber, is you mix a blue and a yellow to create a green. And in my opinion, a bit of a muted, almost like mossy kind of, it's like more of a pine green. A little bit of a muted green, not too bright of a green. So if your green is too bright, add maybe a little bit of blue to dull it down a little bit. And then, so once you've got your green, you mix in some red, crimson red, with that green. And if it doesn't look quite right, then you're gonna have to think, okay, do I want it warmer, cooler? And I added a little bit more yellow, and that's when we ended up with this. Now, it's not exact, but I would say that's darn freaking close. And you can still add more pigment and color to it to fine tune it a little bit more. Now, for this beautiful one up here, which is more like a burnt sienna type situation, you can go and make a purple out of crimson red and phthalo blue. So we are steering away from this cobalt blue. The phthalo blue you got to be very careful with. It's very pigmented. See that? That turned it into a purple real fast. Darker purple there. We want a muted purple. It's pretty dark. So there we go. And then you're going to start adding cadmium yellow into that mixture, and in order to make it into a brown. Now you can already see that it has way more of a greenish undertone here. If you're like, well, that's not the right color. Well, let's add a little bit more crimson red to this. Warm it up a little. If you do it too much, it will definitely turn into more of a reddish color. Then I tend to pull the purple back that I already had at the top and go back in. Now I still see it's a little purpley because it has a different starting tone, right? It's different than that. You start with a green, here you start it with a purple, which I kind of covered up. So is that a little too dark? In my opinion, it might be. So we're gonna add a little bit more yellow to that. Warm it up a little, brighten it a little bit. And there you go. I would not add blue to this because that's gonna darken it. And adding more red is gonna make it more of a, like a reddish tone, right? So let's put this on there and see what we get here. So like I told you, it's a little bit more towards a burnt sienna, but it's also a pretty close brown tint, you know, to the burnt umber. Now you can see they're not exactly the same. I'm sorry, I feel that, but I think this is pretty close. That if you are in a pinch and you don't have burnt umber on hand, this is a way to do it. Okay, so I'm gonna tell you one more time which colors I mixed for which one. Okay, I'm just going to use a different one to point at it. To create this color, which was also this one, you grab a cobalt blue, cad yellow, make that into a green, which you can see right here, and then you start adding crimson red, a little bit at a time. And then you might have to add another pinch of yellow, you know, if you wanted to mute it out a little bit. Okay, and for this guy here, you start with crimson red, that right here, and phthalo blue, that one, to create a purple that I kind of covered up, but you can still see it around the edges. You create a purple, and then you start adding cadmium yellow, which is this one in the bottom here. I would say in order to get a burnt umber, I would definitely try to find the paints, like within your paint selection, try to find the paints that have warm undertones, because a burnt umber has a bit of a warm undertone. Obviously burnt sienna has an even more warmer undertone, but as you can see, this one is a little bit more towards that burnt sienna kind of color. It's kind of in between, right? But yeah, just make sure that you use warmer tones, not cooler tones, unless that's what you're going for. You can mute it again by adding a little bit more blue if you wanted to. So yeah, you can definitely create a burnt umber type color out of primary colors only. And yes, you see there is a white on my palette, and I only used it once right around here. And all it did was it did brighten the color, but it brought the undertone out more than anything, in this case blue, which did not help me create the color I wanted. So you got to be very careful. White is not always the answer to brighten colors. So yellow is a very good go-to for brightening colors. And one other thing about white is that it will sometimes make things a little chalky or pastel-like. I can actually give you a very, very quick, I will show it to you by adding white to what we've already created, and I'll show you how that turns into more of a pastel type color. You see that? It's lovely if you want to create a color harmony, like let's say that's going to be your second, like let's say this is your base color for, let's say, a coat for a bear or something like that, and you wanted to start with like a second layer with highlights, then that's great. But this is not ever going to look like a burnt umber, because that white really, really brightens your pigment in there. So I'm going to show it with the other one. I'm just cleaning my brush. Be careful with white, okay? This is titanium white, by the way. There are different kinds of white. If you've got like a beigey, creamy white, could slightly change the outcome, as well as when you use, let's say, a cool white that might have a bluish undertone. Okay, so I'm gonna just grab this in the corner and just add white to it. You can see how it mutes it. It's a beautiful color, nothing wrong with the color, right? But it's not a burnt umber, and it never will be. So I don't think you should be using white if you're trying to create a burnt umber out of primary colors. All right, that's all she wrote, guys. Ta-da! And you know what? This was all me messing around, and that would have been a half-an-hour video of me messing around, so I didn't want to show you that. But you can see that it took me a little bit of trial and error to get the right color. So don't be discouraged if you don't get it right away. Just keep playing around with it, and all of a sudden you're like, hey, wait a minute, that worked. And when something kind of looks similar, write down what you did, okay? That's what a sketchbook is for. So stay happy, keep your peace, and God bless you. Bye-bye.